Hi, Craig. Welcome to the SEO show. For people who may not have heard of you, if you could just let us know a little bit about yourself and what you do, that'd be great.
Thanks, Michael. So my name's Craig Campbell. I'm based in Glasgow, Scotland. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. I've been everything from the freelancer working in the bedroom, having no clue what I was doing. I have went on to build up a successful digital marketing agency. Don't ask me why I chose to go down that route. I had 17 staff at one point, dealing with loads of clients. I'd done that for probably about 9 years until I decided enough was enough. It was really hard to scale that any further than I did. And for probably the last 6 or 7 years, in fact, it's 2015, I gave up the agency and started to focus more on affiliate marketing, building a personal brand, buying and selling digital assets. I felt at the 2015 time, I'd done my apprenticeship, I'd done all the hard work, and decided to try and make the money that I had earned work for me rather than me, begging and singing for money from clients. So that's a brief um, background of what I've done, and yeah, there's lots of stories in between.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So I've brought you on because we wanted to chat about Black Hat SEO, but the fact that you've built an agency there and grew it to 17 people and then sold it, I found that interesting. You mentioned scaling problems. Was that because you were just sort of in the trenches doing SEO and you found it tough to remove yourself from that, or what sort of went on there that you sort of hit a ceiling?
That was certainly part of the problem, trying to remove myself. I'd built myself into the business rather than working on the business, and I think that's problematic for many SEOs who get into this game. I started out early 2000s, and it wasn't as prominent as it is now. SEO, the learning curve was a lot harder. There was no YouTube, there was no Facebook people, none of these things were alive. So my learning curve was a forum, and it was called the SEO Chat Forum, which is still there. It's owned by Internet Marketing Ninjas now. Um, but when you're sitting at home and you're this kind of shady freelancer who's making it up as he's going along, you're not thinking of you know uh, being a businessman or anything. So as it goes, and you're making a few quid and you're getting a bit stressed, you hire a sales guy or whatever. My first hire was a sales dude, just because I hated talking to clients and that whole rigmarole of talking crap all the time to try and get the money. And I
Mm.
wasn't very good at it. I was undercharging myself and all that stuff. So I thought, sales guy. Then it was a content writer. Then it was a web person, because we were doing everything. It was a full agency, giving them a website, and then nailing the SEO. And before I knew it, that's when I got an office, hired the sales guy, started getting these people, and before I knew it, I had all these people doing bits of stuff, but I wasn't, the guy in the middle. And that's where I really struggled. I struggled to delegate. I wasn't a businessman. I wasn't thinking like a businessman. And, even things like not trusting people to do the job I was doing. I thought I was the only guy in the world that could do this, and you have all these kind of weird thoughts and stuff. A young guy earning money. There's a bit of ego in there as well. You're hiring people for the sheer hell of hiring people. I'll never know for the life of me how or why I had 17 staff. It was just insanity. It's. I think I went through this stage of thinking I'm going to have the biggest agency in the world and all this kind of stuff. And, a lot of it was kind of ego and madness. And yeah, I really don't know what was going through my head until it came to a point where you're like, geez, I'm in the middle of all this, and I'm not getting time to do anything. I felt as if I couldn't breathe and stuff like that. So yeah, built myself into a really stressful situation.
Mm. Okay, well, yeah, I can certainly empathize with a lot of what you've said there from running our own agency here in Australia. But I find it really cool that you took a step back from that and have focused more on, I guess, your passion, SEO, and building your brand in the space, and sort of getting your name out there more as a, I guess, an educator and I guess, a freelance consultant, affiliate person. Where I think I came across you originally is a little, what do you want to call it? A prank that you might have played on Nigel Farage, who
Ah,
for for Australian listeners, you may or may not have heard of him. He's a UK politician, I guess, or political figure. But maybe you could tell us a bit more about what you did there, because it's pretty interesting and cheeky.
so back then, when I done this, Nigel Farage was the guy that was leading the Brexit campaign. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, in Australia, the UK have since left the European Union, so we're no longer part of Europe. And Europe collectively, there's all these countries, tons of them, all together. You can fly in and out without visas. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you would be in the European Union, but also part of that is the countries have to pay in X amount of money into European Union, and it gets spent across Europe rather than on your own country. So Britain, for one reason or another, decided to leave, and he was the kind of main guy behind all of that. So it was big news. Leaving the European Union was massive, and he was one of the kind of ringleaders in all of that. So he was very prominent figure in the political world, and I like to talk about Black Hat SEO and expired domains and all this kind of stuff. And people often ask me, "No, do real good domains really expire?" And yes, they do. People take their eye off the ball. People are not smart, and Nigel Farage somehow took his eye off the ball, and his domain was expiring. And for you guys in Australia, there's a certain process. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the UK, when the domain expires, it goes into suspended status, which
Mm.
gives it around about 60 odd days before it's then released to the public market. So Nigel could have grabbed that domain name in that 60 day. You're warned, your domain's expired, renew, you're constantly warned. And for me looking at it, it was a prank, but the amount of backlinks that nigelfarage.co.uk had from websites that I could never get, the BBC and all these kind of national, international newspapers, the coverage that guy's got would literally cost you millions and millions of pounds in PR.
Mm.
And this domain was expiring, so boom, got it when it expired. And I it was difficult to do anything with it, from an affiliate perspective, because it's a bloody politician's branded domain name. So what I'd done was just put up his website from the Wayback Machine, just recreated all the old URLs, let all the link just kick back in, and it's still like that to this day. But I used to tell people about it at conferences and all that kind of stuff, and people are like, "How are you going to monetize that?" And I'm like, I only done it for a kind of joke, but I thought, how else can I leverage it? So I started to release it to the newspapers so that I could get my own PR from having the Nigel Farage domain name. But I wanted to basically just show the world that high profile companies, profile individuals do let their domains expire. People die, people go bust. There's a number of reasons why a domain name might expire, and in terms of Black Hat SEO, what can you do with that power is entirely up to yourself. Now, obviously, with a personal brand, and the high profile that he is, I had to be very careful legally, in terms of what I was able to do with that domain name. But I think it made for a great story, but it also got me a lot of press. I also had Nigel, trying to get his domain name back, which he still never got back.
Really?
Um, it's it's more beneficial for me to tell the story and have the domain name than give him it back. But yeah, he
Mm.
stupidly took his eye off the ball. He lost out on millions and millions of pounds worth of press, link juice, if you want to call it that. And I do have some other high profile individuals. There's a couple of others that I have. And there came a time, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when the .music domain came out. And two high profile individuals, one called Craig David,
Oh yeah.
um, and another band called The Killers,
Yep.
basically just dropped their domain name, their .co.uk domain names, and went straight over to .music. So I also own craigdavid.co.uk and thekillers.co.uk, both of which were their official websites for 10 plus years. Again, wild press coverage. And yeah, so high profile domain names expire all the time. And that was the message I was trying to get across, and also to educate, the public. Be careful with your domain names as well, because
Mm.
there'll always be some shark waiting in the background, waiting to pounce upon the work that you've done.
Yeah, and once they're gone, or they're very difficult and expensive to get back. Um,
Exactly.
I really love the approach you've taken there of leveraging the fact that you have those domains to get more links and PR for your own website. I think that's really clever. On a much smaller scale than Craig David and the Killers, I actually owned the domain name killingheidi.com.au at one point, which was an Australian band back in the day that broke up, and it had a whole bunch of links, but I never did anything with it. And I'm sure if you looked it up now, it'd probably be a PBN, site. But yeah, definitely a lot of domains dropping every day. And I think it would be cool to talk about that in a minute. But I guess it would be good to introduce why you've come on the show today, which is to talk about Black Hat SEO, which sort of ties in with this world. There's all sorts of things you can do in Black Hat SEO, but maybe to kick things off, let's define, what is Black Hat SEO, what is White Hat SEO, and then we'll go into maybe some of the other things like expired domains that you've gotten involved in over the years.
So there is obviously, as you say, the term black hat SEO, white hat SEO that's thrown around, and then you've got something in the middle where people call it grey hat SEO or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, I don't really like terming it one or the other. Now, I 100% get someone like yourself as an agency. You can't talk about PBNs, buying links, doing this, that, or the next thing to your clients. You're working in the corporate world. There's a certain language and a certain way to conduct yourself,
Mm.
which I believe is white hat SEO. Now, when you talk to clients, if you're under that agency, white hat SEO or whatever, your job is not to scare the client. Your job is not to use that kind of language. And there's a certain element of things that I would do that maybe you wouldn't do from a client perspective. Where I'll use link building automation to power up a guest post. I will buy niche edits. I'll do this, that, and the next thing. Now, as far as I'm concerned, SEO is an art of manipulation. You're manipulating the search engines, and whether you admit to that or not, or the language that you use would determine whether you're white hat or whatever. The job though is to rank well and make money online. And because I do certain things, people term that as black hat. Now, of course, I don't go out and use link building automation and point it direct to my website that's making me a ton of money. Why would I ever set out to get slapped by Google? That's not the job. My job is to be here for as long as you are, to make money online and compete at the upper end of the search engines. And yes, I will talk about, I will buy a guest post. I will use a niche edit to power that up. I will use a PBN. I will use expired domain names. I will do this, that, and the next thing. And for me, that's all about making money and doing the job properly. you can't have that conversation with a client. And I think that's with a client, because they don't know it, and it will scare the shit out of them, first and foremost. And secondly, they don't really want to be seen. You've got Google saying, "Oh, don't buy links" and all that stuff.
Mm,
People are like sheep. When Google says something, people follow it. 80% of people follow that to the exact word. Um, Google as a company do not want us manipulating what they do. They can't cope with it. But for me, the 20% of people who don't follow Google like little sheep are the ones that make the most money online. And as I say, I'm not suggesting that you go out and hack websites and do all this kind of bad stuff. And you can do what I get the term black hat thrown at me all the time.
mm,
Um, you know, when I'm ranking a website, yes, I do digital PR. Yes, I will go to the press and do traditional PR. Yes, I will do everything I can as clean as I possibly can before I would do any of the funny stuff. Um, because I think you've got to build a good, solid foundation. So I'm not doing SEO any differently from anyone else. You still do on page, you still do technical, you're still doing all your kind of good stuff. You would just push yourself up to the if there's a line in terms of a boundary, I would push that probably higher than maybe someone in an agency. But that's what the agency's saying. Whether the agency's actually
mm.
playing that game is often very different. So I think we'll find that SEO is SEO, and there is no real hats. It would come down to sheer stupidity if you were going to start, doing spam on your own website or whatever. I think that would be called the stupid hat or whatever. No one's doing that. So that's a kind of brief way of how I see it. And as I say, fully respect people in agencies, because I've done it myself, worked with corporate clients, and there's just a different type of language and a different way that you have to kind of sell it and suggest what you're doing and offer more deliverables and all that kind of bollocks.
Mm.
Is what goes on.
Yeah, look, and I completely agree. Like, if you're doing SEO for yourself on your own website, like in my opinion, Black Hat is really illegal. Like, hacking someone, doing something totally shady is Black Hat, whereas everything
Yeah,
else is just varying degrees of testing and optimizing and seeing what works and trying to get results, right?
yeah.
So look, I guess trying to put on this black hat, gray hat lens or hat, um, just so people listening can get an idea for what's possible. Do you have any, major wins or traffic or revenue results or something that you can share from black hat tactics, like maybe an old site that you no longer have where you really were able to do well on the back of what would be considered, black hat in inverted commas?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that I've done back in the day, that you'd probably say, Craig, that is a bit suspect. So back in the day, one of my biggest revenue makers was a website that ranked well for customer service numbers. Now, when I say that, I mean like Vodafone customer service, um, all the kind of local banks and customer service number, Sky TV customer service number, literally hundreds of them. Anyone who would phone up and complain or have a problem, I ranked for the brand name plus customer service. Now, what I used to do there was all I was competing was people's contact pages. So that it wasn't anything that was outrageously difficult. So what I'd done was ranked for all these customer service numbers, and then I would have a premium number, which I got through a company called talknumbers.co.uk here in the UK. And basically, I was getting paid 7p a minute for ranking well for the bank and customer service number. So people would phone up the bank, talk to them, they would still get through to the bank, they would still get themselves resolved, but I had positioned myself in the middle, as a middleman through a premium number. And I'd done that with thousands and thousands of different companies, and made a lot of money, a lot of money. But around about 2018, Ofcom um, caught on to this, and it is now illegal to do that. So that type of business model, has failed. It no longer makes the money that it did, and you had to put on the website underneath the number. This is actually a premium number you're calling. So it kind of killed the conversions. But other things um, that I've potentially done to get quick traffic and quick money would be around about Google My Business listings. And even to this day, you can still hijack an unverified GMB listing. You can even hijack a verified one. So it's very, very easy to do. And they do bring in a lot of traffic. So normally, if you look out there, you'll see a lot of people who maybe have 10, 20, 30 listings all in the one city. How do they do that? What's going on there? They're likely to be hijacking old GMBs that are no longer properly managed. And this it's beggars belief, by the way. Absolute beggars belief how Google have such a flaw in their system. But if I was to claim your GMB right now, if you don't respond to say that that's your GMB within 7 days, that GMB becomes mine.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
then it's beggars belief. It is insane that there's such a flaw, and that flaw still exists to this day. So people are still hijacking GMBs on a massive scale and doing lead gen. So, for example, you could be in Sydney and you could be a plumber. And you could basically go and grab all the kind of old plumbers who are dumb as shit, and don't look after their GMBs and own them all. Go in, claim them, edit them, put your phone number on there. These guys are then none the wiser. I mean, it's honestly beggars belief. There was also a flaw within Google My Business. This has been fixed, where if you went in and suggested an edit on a Google My Business listing and put their opening date to a date in the future, so I come into yours and I suggest that you're not opened until October 2023, it would make your GMB disappear. So you could also go around shutting people's GMBs down. Now, that, of course, is Black Hat. Have I played? Have I done that stuff? Have I educated on all that stuff? Yes. More so to tell people to bloody be careful, that's not happening. But a lot of people out there are still making a lot of money, simply not through traditional SEO, but just Google My Business listings and doing that stuff in such a massive scale and selling the leads on. So they do a lot of paper lead generation, whatever you call it over there. And these are things that I have done in the past. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. So you can make money from it, but taking food from another man's or women's table, it's not for me. So I try and educate people to kind of avoid doing that, but also to protect yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's I guess it is a way to make a living, but it's, I guess, at the end of the day, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror, and if you're just ripping off people's GMBs and businesses while they're none the wiser, there's other ways of SEO that you can use that would sit better with most
Exactly.
people, you would hope. But look, that's all very interesting. I think I heard you talk there about sort of just taking over like someone's listing. I've seen you talk about in the past doing a bit of an outbound campaign demanding credit for images that are used in posts, which I find interesting because I have like to build links in the past. I would go and get images created around themes and then put them up on free image websites where journalists would find them, and I just asked that I'd be credited with a link in it, and maybe 50% of the time they would give you the credit, the other 50% they don't. What your approach is sort of taking this to the next level. It's sort of removing a big chunk of work from it, which I thought was really cool. Could you tell us a bit more about what you've done in that space?
You cut off there, Michael, halfway through that.
So I was saying, with that approach where I would go and create images and then have journalists give me credit, there's quite a bit of front end work there actually creating the images. But your approach, which is really interesting, gets rid of the need to do that work. So if you could tell us a bit more about that, I thought it was a pretty interesting angle that you had there.
So again, preying on the dumb people of the internet. Um, so, for example, I always use the Liverpool Echo in this example. So, if you Google something like the Liverpool Echo, which is a UK newspaper, and then copyright unknown, you will literally see a million images on that particular newspaper where they don't know who that picture belongs to. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's an opportunity, and you know when you see this, these newspaper articles and a lot of the national press, they show you the journalist details. It gives you their email, it gives you their Twitter, it gives you their Facebook, the whole works. So reaching out to that person and saying, hey, you know, you've published this article on such and such a date. That's my image you used. And 8 out of 10 times that will work, or has worked for me in the past, because they're just a journalist. They don't know what SEO is, they don't know what a link is or the value of it or anything. Now, obviously, since I start talking about these things become a lot more difficult, because when you release something like that, everyone then starts trying that trick.
Mm.
So it does become a little bit more difficult. Um, what I have also done, um, is set up a fake lawyer website, a copyright lawyer website, and I do the reach out to the journalist from that, saying, "Listen, you've used my client's image. They don't want any trouble. They're just looking for a link to be credited for the image that you've used. If you can place the link to here, everyone will be happy." Normally now you have to step up the game, because it's now, I've been speaking about that trick for the last 4 or 5 years. So in the last 4 or 5 years, journalists would normally turn around now and say, "Piss off," because everyone's trying that trick. But if they see it from a copyright lawyer, again, it scares them. They
Mm.
don't want trouble. So how that trick would work in 2022, I think you would have to be slightly more aggressive with it, because no one wants any kind of copyright problems or potentially be taken to court. And for me, that's how low I've had to stoop for that trick to still work in 2022. But back then, just merely suggesting it, was probably 9 out of 10 would go for it. No problem at all, as long as you weren't being a douchebag. It was all about the way that you reached out to them.
Mm.
If you're going to go all out aggressive, you're going to get someone's backup. So always just coming in softly, gently. You've used my image.
Please, could I get a
Why
link?
would not get credit? Just
Yeah.
act dumb. And yeah, that image trick worked very, very well. And like you say, you could go and do all this front end work, um, which is a lot more money, time, expense. Why do all of that when you can just reach out to a guy saying, that's my image? Is the way that I think, because SEOs are lazy, and they want the quickest, easiest way of getting that link. So why go to the cost of getting that image made up and all that kind of stuff before you do it? That's the way I was thinking. However, when I've spoken about that trick at conferences and stuff, I'll never forget. I'd done it at a very small, maybe 50-person conference. It was like a local meetup, call it that. And a journalist came up to me and she went, "Craig, I want to shake your hand." She said, "But I also want to punch you right in the face." And I'm like, "What?" She went, "It's genius, the trick that you've done." She says, "But I'm a journalist." And she says, "And I'm infuriated that someone like you would come along and try and hijack all of my good writing and all my good work and suggest that an image is yours. So I can get it from that point of view as well. It's can rub people up the wrong way. But the woman was only half joking when she said, I want to punch you in the face, but you need to be careful because it can be infuriating if you are hijacking other people's stuff as well. So
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Well, speaking of hijacking and newspaper sites, do you have much experience with Parasite SEO and, ranking, let's say, an article on a strong news domain with maybe a sponsored post that you've purchased and then using that to make affiliate commission or any other forms of Parasite SEO there? Because that's a pretty
yes,
interesting
I
topic
have
at the
done
moment.
that. Yes, I have done it to make affiliate commission, but in a lot of cases, I would do that for what is called reputation management. So I do a lot of work for people who would approach me saying, Craig, if you Google my name, there's stuff here that I don't want to be seen. Whether they've hit someone or assaulted someone, there's a number of different things that people want to shove further down the Google rankings. And one of the quickest and easiest ways for me to dominate, say, the top 5 results would be to go and get articles placed on higher authority PR placements, or even using things like Crunchbase, Medium, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All of these kind of ones you would want to be using, and you're leveraging the power of the domain name. Now, obviously, I mainly do that for reputation management, but of course, you can do that from an affiliate perspective. And normally, the reason that I have to go for the kind of higher profile stuff is because these people have already been in a kind of local newspaper,
Mm.
and it's been reported on, but it's just not been well optimized. So I've got to basically manipulate the whole of the top 10 search results to shove that stuff down onto page 2, sometimes even onto page 3. People want to put it, and yeah, you've just got to use a combination of different sites to do that. And obviously, social media is one of the ones that are quite prominent. So if you Google your name, you probably find that your LinkedIn's up there. You'll be able to see when you do a person's name what kind of works and what doesn't, and these are the ones that you would want to leverage. Medium, not so much now,
Mm.
but certainly the top social medias, Crunchbase, and various other bits and bobs are great for that. And then from there, getting a guest post on one of these kind of bigger, higher profile news websites works a treat.
And then do you go as far as building links to these profiles as well, like perhaps using,
Oh yeah,
like back in the day, SAPE or other types of, high volume, high authority, cheap links to try and
you've
juice
got
up?
to, you've
Yep.
got to. I mean, and whether this is for reputation management or whether this is simply building a guest post to an affiliate website, everyone in the industry still uses SAPE. Um, everyone it's now called SERPzilla is the new branded name because SAPE just sounds bad, if you ask me. But yeah, niche edits work very, very well. The same as automated link building, building Web 2.0s and a whole bunch of garbage like that. Do people do that to their guest posts? Yes, because you can't. For me, you can build a guest post, which of course powers up a website, but you can't build a guest post to a guest post to power up a website because the cost becomes ridiculous. So
Mm.
that is where people will utilize blacker hat ways, such as SAPE, where you can get a link for 20 pence, whatever. It's really that cheap. To get a DR54, it's outrageously cheap. So again, yes, these are hacked links essentially, but who cares? It's cheap and it's powering up a website, and that's where this stuff fits into the industry.
Mm.
I think it's where you utilize these tactics is how it works basically. Because if you're competing with someone and they're using SAPE and they're using this, that, and the next thing, you just have to either accept defeat or join them. It's as far as I'm concerned, in competitive markets where there's potentially millions, if not hundreds of millions, on the table, then you're going to have to resort to fighting fire with fire if you want to compete at the top end of the table. So, yes, powering up guest posts is very much something that I would do, regardless of whether it was for reputation management or whether it was for any other form of link building activity.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, totally hear what you're saying there. If you were to believe Google, you could go into like a space like VPNs or something and just publish good content and expect to get some traffic in time if you did everything right. But in the real world, that's not happening. You need to, like everything in SEO, you have to look at what the state of the SERPs are and what people are up to, and give Google what it's already telling us it wants to see by the sites that are ranking well. So, yep, that all makes a lot of sense. And on that note, I guess at the moment, you know, the big thing, it's not really from what I've seen very big, but for a little brief moment there over the last couple of weeks, the helpful content update and this crackdown on AI was going to be the big thing that Google was up to. And, there's all these people building, people also ask generated AI spun sites and making huge amounts of money off them. Do you have anything that you can sort of throw in the mix in that world when it comes to, using AI or spinning up mass generated content on sites? And do you think Google's even capable of detecting this stuff properly?
I think we are capable of detecting it. However, you know, when they release things like the helpful content update and people are all kicking off, the Google's done another update. They have always been looking for helpful content. Your content is supposed to be helpful for the user.
Mm-hmm.
So, it again beggars belief that SEOs kick off that Google are now looking for helpful content. It's not changed. For years they've been looking for helpful content. Now, when it comes to AI content, I have tried time and time again. I'd love to push a button and for something to write my content and throw it out there and it ranks and it sticks and all that. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't stick. Now, some people will argue, oh, yes, look at mine's works. It's these guys that are getting slapped at every other update. I've seen people doing it aggressively and then getting slapped into oblivion. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying that AI assisted content doesn't work. So, just straight out the box, AI content does not work as far as I'm concerned. Through my own testing, yes, some of it will index, some of it will get slapped. It's just not good enough. And Google can detect that. You can use a website like Hugging Face to check for AI content. There's tools out there that can tell you whether it's AI content. So, can Google tell if a tool can tell? 100% they can. However, that doesn't mean that AI content doesn't have to be completely ignored. As I say, it can be used, it can be paraphrased, it can be spun, whatever you want to do with it. It can be edited so that you're getting chunks of content using AI, but there's other parts of the process where it can then become completely unique. Um, but I still think one, you need a bit of human editing, and two, the best tool in the world that I have ever bought is a tool called quillbot.com.
Mm.
Um, it's not a spinner; it's a paraphraser. So if you use AI, so I've got here's my process. I've got a tool called Writer, RYTR, that I got from AppSumo, which basically scrapes the top 10 search results for your keyword and gives you headers to use, headers and subheaders. So I will use that I will then grab one of the headers or subheaders, and I will run it through Jasper to pull a paragraph. So I'm putting all of this onto a document. I will then go to Quillbot and paraphrase the whole fucking lot of it. And then I will go into Grammarly, obviously sort out the grammar, and then check the plagiarism. And the chances of that, after going through that whole process of being plagiarized in any way or triggering any of the AI content writers, are slim to none. So it's a kind of 4-step process for me that can work. But you would still need a human being to edit and tweak and do parts on it, and add their little spin on it as well. It just does mean though that you can get scalability in terms of speed and stuff like that on content. The problem I think we've got in the world just now is you could go and hire a content writer from anywhere in the world. You don't know what you're getting thrown at you. Is it
Yep.
AI assisted? Is it all AI?
Yep.
It's bloody difficult. So, and these writers are clever enough to be able to make it pass these kind of plagiarism checkers or AI detectors, and they're getting away with charging for shit content. That's why I still believe you need a human being to oversee it and tweak it and all that kind of stuff.
Mm. Yeah, you see these people on Twitter and YouTube teaching people how to make money selling content on Fiverr just using
Yeah,
AI tools. So people think they're getting one thing and they're getting something totally different altogether. So again, it's like
it's
everything, quality control, and you got to be on top of what's actually ending up on your site at the end of the day.
yeah, exactly.
Well, look, Craig, this has been awesome. I could talk to you all day about this stuff, but I'm conscious of time and keeping this sort of short and sweet. So I think I'll wrap things up. But I like to finish by asking the same three questions of everyone that comes on the show, just to see
Hmm.
how they think about things. So I'll jump into them. They're pretty simple. The first one is, what do you think is the biggest myth in SEO?
Biggest myth. Uh, the biggest myth. The biggest myth you've already said that actually, writing good content will be rewarded by these kind of natural backlinks. That would work for someone like maybe Coca-Cola, or something similar where people may link to something naturally because it's funny, witty, whatever. The chances of that happening for a window tinting company in Sydney, or a plumber, or any other, 99% of the niches that are out there are slim to none. So Google rewarding good content with natural backlinks is the by far the worst thing. It's and I know that's not that comment is not going to surprise you, but it has to be the biggest
Mm,
load of crap that I've ever heard. From an SEO perspective.
totally agree with you on that one. Well, on the alternate end of the spectrum, what would you say is, I guess, the most underrated thing in SEO, or like most effective thing that people aren't doing?
People are not doing. I can't say any one thing as such because it would be an unfair answer. But I'll be honest, I audit a lot of websites. I speak to a lot of people who are struggling in the SEO industry. People come to me, Craig, can you have a look at this? Can you have a look at that? Can you audit my website? Whatever. People are just not doing the basics properly.
Mm,
Again, I'm not going to give you some magical tip because there is no magic bullet here. And I think for me, what people are looking for is some kind of magic trick to work. SEO is a combination of doing the basics properly and putting in a bit of hard work and effort. That is it. There is no magical trick that I know or special shop that I shop in to get better content or better links or whatever it might be. I think many people are just not doing the basics right, and they don't understand the basics of SEO. Whether that be keyword research is also done 99% of the time very badly. Topical clustering, page structure, internal linking, even doing basic link building is done so badly. It's unreal, and people are doing building citation after citation after citation to their website, and it's just not helpful. And citations, of course, will help your GMB and other bits and bobs, but I think just the basics of SEO are just still, 20 years into the game, I still pinch myself at how basic this industry still is at this point. I'm not saying industry leaders or people that are doing it. I'm just talking about purely from a customer perspective. Customers still have no clue. Businesses are still not doing great SEO. They're not spending enough money on it, and just not doing the basics properly. So that is something I feel is not being done enough.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, the last question relates to tools because, as you've already mentioned on the show, a few different tools there in the SEO world. We love our tools. We love finding new tools. We love shiny new things in that sense. But if you had to pick three tools to get the job done, what's your go-to arsenal?
Quillbot.com is by far the first and best tool you will ever use in your life. That's the paraphrasing tool that I mentioned earlier. Second would have to be SEMrush, purely because I just think it's a multi-functional tool. You can do audit, keyword research, competitor analysis. So I have to have SEMrush no matter what. Third tool that I would have to use. I'm only allowed 3, right? No more.
No more.
The the third tool would probably have to be, what one do I use the most? I'm not going to lie. I'm still going to stick with an old school tool in GSA as the third, if that's all I'm allowed, because with GSA, again, you've got link building automation. Is that something I still use on a regular basis? Yes. Why? To power up links. Why GSA? Because you can scrape your own lists. You do not have to use inventory that's been used time and time again. So GSA would have to be the third tool, not because I think it moves the needle that much. I just think it's one of the most frequently used in terms of powering up links. Of course I can go and buy guest posts, but I think just in terms of powering stuff up, I still think GSA gives me the freedom to do what I like, whereas maybe other tools tie into their own crappy inventory that every Tom, Dick, and Harry is placing links on. So that would probably GSA. Is probably the third one. It's not the best one, but I think a combination of those three. If that's all I had, and you were going to stick me in an island, and I had to make some money,
Yep.
I think I could do some damage with three of them. Of course, there's a million other tools out there that I love, but those three are the ones. If my back's pushed against the wall, I'm taking those three with me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, two there have not been mentioned before, so that's good. I think that will be interesting for people to check out. GSC is something I haven't looked at since I'd say 2012 or so, 2013. I was playing around with X Rumor and GSC and that sort of stuff back in the day. So
Yeah,
very interesting that you're using it. We didn't get to talk about it today, but maybe we'll have to have you back in the future to talk about that whole world of automated link building because pretty
definitely.
interesting.
I'm always up for it. So, yeah, as I say, there is tons of other tools out there that are used. But listen, I was going to throw Scrapebox in as well,
Mm-hmm.
because you use that to scrape your lists and stuff. So some of the old school tools, the point I'm trying to make, still work very, very well in their specific role. But what I would like to highlight is please do not use GSA direct to your money site, people. Do not get excited, because we all do. We love tools and all that stuff, but do not send this stuff to your own website.
Absolutely. That goes through a lot of the stuff we've spoken about today. A big sort of red alert warning sign on it. We're talking about it, but we're not recommending you go do it. I would say, unless you're doing it on your own site, not on anything that is super important or a client or anything like that. But
Yeah.
look, it's been awesome chatting to you, Craig. I'm sure people are going to want to go check you out after this show. So where can people go to connect with you?
You can go to my website, craigcampbellseo.com. You can add me pretty much on any social media platform out there, whether that be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm even on TikTok if you want to see some bad dancing. And I do have a YouTube channel which has 800 plus video tutorials on all things SEO, right down to CTR manipulation. The videos are pretty much microscopic in terms of all the different tricks, tools, and everything that you need to do. So they're all segmented into different playlists. So if you're looking for more educational content, the YouTube is the place to go. And I also do 2 live weekly Q&A sessions where you can hit me with any questions that you like. Although they're normally on around about 5 p.m. UK time, which is probably like 2 or 3 a.m. your time. But you can watch the replays; they're all on there anyway.
That's it. And the YouTube channel, I can vouch, has a lot of great content on it. So definitely check it out. And Craig, it's been great chatting. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Michael. Been a pleasure.